Nightly Musers, followers of the pod, faithful few and hopeful many. This is Anchor by Spotify. If you haven't heard about it, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's the very platform that allows me to give you what I give you on the nightly. So let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And it gives you the ability to distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally FREE free. So here's where you come in. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That is ANCHOR.fm to get started. Thank you very much. Peace. Welcome to the Nightly Muse podcast. As I mentioned in yesterday's episode, this is part 2 of the porn talk. Same warning goes as last episode. If you're with young ones, you probably don't want to listen to it with them there. But it's going to be real and it's going to be my story, and I'm excited to tell it. Shout out Low Fly. When you're done, give us 5 stars. Check out Low Fly's work. It's amazing. And it's a huge blessing to this podcast and what we do. What I do. There ain't no we. But enjoy. It's just going to start right at me talking. So, which is... you know what I'm trying to say. It goes straight into it, so get ready. And I hope it's meaningful and a good warning for those who need it, and a good space to process for those who need that as well. Love you guys. I'm not gonna go into what, what studies or people, like what the world says, like in terms of the negatives of pornography. I'm just going to talk about my story. And so when I say the things that I say, I'm just talking about it because I experienced it. It's amazing in a scary way how gradual changes can have like drastic consequences. So to an extent, right, you're kind of innocent, and your sin, in the sense that, like, I was a pretty naive kid and sheltered in a good way, and so there were a lot of things I didn't know, I didn't have the words for, and so I'm learning that what I'm doing is porn, and what I'm watching is that, and I'm learning that it's wrong. I'm learning all of these things out of order, right? And an 8-year-old getting sex education from something that's fake. It's not realistic. It's not what sex really is. And then you learn about the objectification and all of these things. It objectifies women. It changes how you view women. And like I said, as a kid, I always viewed women as beautiful creatures of the Lord in a good way, right? Adam saw Eve and said, "My God, you've made a good thing," right? Like, yeah. And like, your attractions change, the things that you notice, your eyes trail to places you wouldn't expect to go. Noticing a girl's pretty face becomes the second or third thing that you notice, because now you're just looking at her body. And the objectification begins, and it doesn't start immediately, but over years of a struggle, over time, you go from a healthy admiration or a at least God approved appreciation, right? Attraction is a real thing to a warped image of image bearers. You no longer view people as fellow, like this isn't some chick to get with. This isn't some girl to just look at and say she's hot or got a nice behind or whatever, right? Like, it's not that. This is another human who is created in the image of God, fearfully and wonderfully made, just like you, just like your sister, just like your mother, just like your father. Like, it's God's daughter. Even more so when they decide to follow Jesus, but God's creation regardless. And slowly but surely those things fade. That voice that tells you this is a beautiful person created in the image of God, regardless of if you say the latter part, but you notice beauty, right? That voice becomes quieter and quieter and quieter. And what gets louder and louder and louder is, wow, look at that bod, look at that whatever. All of the things that draw you, you've become drawn to and inclined to because of the images and videos that you look at each and every night or however often. It changes you. It changed me. Things that you create morals for what you allow yourself to watch and not watch, and that slowly changes, and it just wrecks your mind. And the shame, you feel like the worst human in the world, because you've also learned, right, that if the Bible says, I command you not to just, like, the Bible or the commandments don't just say, like, don't commit adultery, but I tell you, like, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already done it. Like, again, my best tonight, the TKM version, right? That my paraphrase of God, of Jesus, doubling down on the commandments, on the law, and saying, no, it's not just the law, it's not just the action, it's your heart. And so you're learning all of this stuff that, yeah, I may have not done the deed, yeah, I may still be a virgin, but in my heart, I've done the deed with all of the people that I've seen in these videos and in these pictures, all of the, and there's so much shame and there's so much fear that if people find out, what's going to happen? What trouble am I going to get into? Does God love me? Am I that one who's going to be told, depart from me, for I never knew you? Or does the grace count for me? It changes how you see other image bearers, but it also changes how you view the image bearer that you see in the mirror every day. I remember there was this girl in high school I had the biggest crush on. And if you know me from my high school days or my college days, you'll know who I'm talking about. And literally, I'd find myself going in cycles of telling myself I was good enough or not good enough based off of my ability to abstain. Meanwhile, making my desire to abstain about a girl and not even God. So double whammy in terms of priorities, but also then the mental quandaries and gymnastics and turmoil and exhaustion of attaching your worthiness to sin in your life, feeling like you're never going to be able to get free from something because you're addicted or compelled, whatever the phrase is, to a sin that has rewired your brain and the things that you're attracted to and the things that you desire. So this is me telling you my story about that. It's hard to tell it in a way that's like sequential and also not too much. I'm sure I already crossed that boundary, but I don't want to end this episode on a hopeless trend. This isn't Kennedy's confessional. I will say one good thing that I've done is, my goodness, I searched for mentor after accountability partner after accountability partner, because I knew, the story of David and Bathsheba, right? The dude's doing his thing, he's chilling, he's supposed to be at war with his soldiers, with his army, and he's not. He's surveying the land, sees Bathsheba taking a bath, decides he wants that even though it's his friend's wife, and he does the deed, gets her pregnant. Now he's trying to cover it up. Doesn't work, so he kills the husband, takes the wife, and just continues on as if nothing's changed. And finally he gets chastised by somebody, and in his being exposed, he immediately returns to God and asks for forgiveness. Psalm 51, wash me white as snow, and I'll be made whole. So you've got this 8-year-old, 7-year-old, however many years I was inside, just asking God to make him clean again. One of the coolest things that I can take away from this is that though the enemy meant to ruin my life with this struggle, it brought me to God's feet. I was at a retreat in middle school in 7th grade, and this pastor, his name was Kenny Hibbard, he preached a sermon on secret sin. And obviously that's like, that was Kennedy's extra awakening of, this is what you've been doing, secret sin, this is your life. And Kennedy, little Kennedy, proportionally thick but little, husky Kennedy, realized his need for Jesus and said, holy crap, I've been doing this for this long. Understanding the full extent of my sin and what I was doing and how it was hurting me, but also what it was turning me into. And I that is always the year, the time that I say I became a Christian. It was my 7th grade year. And by then I'd already known that what I was doing was wrong, but I was confronted face on with my sin. And yeah, some of it was probably a fear of fire and brimstone and a desire to make things right with God. But mostly it was the first time that I ever realized that I actually needed him. For my whole life, I considered myself a theist, right? I believed in God and I believed that Jesus died for my sins, but that was the first time that I really needed salvation, that I felt the need for it and that I needed help. So I reached out. And so from then on, the struggle just cold turkey disappeared. Absolutely not. That's not what happened. But slowly, person after person, mentor after mentor, confession after confession, I just got really good at confessing and being honest with people because I was really trying to be done with this thing. It's one of the biggest blessings in my life is that I was willing to do that. And it took a lot of work. Man, talk about telling your sisters that and what that, they were the only people in my family I really confessed to. It's another story, but man, it was heartbreaking. It was so hard to do. And there's a reason that I confessed to them, and then I later confessed to my dad. And my whole life has been an undoing of the damage that's done to me, but also the damage that it's done to my perception of who God is. Confessing to my dad and him responding the way that he responded in the moment where I was terrified that I was going to get a heavy-handed response, he responded gently and with grace. And I got a physical representation of who my Heavenly Father was and how he would respond to me in my pain. When I reached out to my football coach and he, time after time after time, mess up after mess up after mess up, stumble after stumble, supported me and just said, hey, I'm here for you and I'm going to help you. He didn't he didn't cast me off. He didn't shun me. Friend after friend just saying, hey, I'm here for you. God still loves you. People convincing me to confess to people that I needed to let go of the chains that had been weighing me down for years. And so, while yes, this struggle led me to Jesus's feet, and it led me to deep relationships with people and accountability partners, mentorships that I wouldn't trade for the world, and glimpses of God's goodness that I can't unsee because of how God used people to show me his love, his mercy, his grace, his correction, his holiness, his righteousness, but also like his just comfort and care. Notice I said a lot of really, really like more positive, more affirming words than punitive, even though God is just and he does demand righteousness and holiness, but he also forgives. He is also gracious. He's also full of love and mercy. And I got to experience a lot of that in a lot of different ways. So this is me saying, yeah, that is a thing in my life that has really done damage, that I'm still learning to deal with and undo and pursue freedom from. But I guess this episode is also here to say that God makes beauty out of broken situations. He takes ashes, and out of compassion, he breathes life back into dry bones, because there's nothing that can keep you out of reach. And only his love changes. Nothing but his love can truly change and heal. Fun fact, those were lyrics from a song that I wrote. I'll try to recite it. God makes beauty out of broken situations. He sees sickness, both carnal and in spirit, but it doesn't faze him, because there's nothing that can keep us from the physician's reach. Because as soon as God's Spirit speaks, your heart is made whole. He makes beauty out of broken situations. He's bringing heaven down to earth again. He's a merciful Father. And man, if you believe in what I believe, then you have hope. Because he's going to make everything right one day. The garden will be restored again. And we'll be able to walk with God the way that he intended. One day. This is the longest episode I've recorded, but when I think about my struggle with this, my near lifelong struggle with it, I'm reminded, one, of the fact that I can hold on to that God-given desire and say, I at least know that one day when God blesses me with a wife and kids, that those desires far outlived the struggle that I've had with this issue. But also that freedom, walking in freedom is one thing, but this idea that God is just magically gonna snap his finger and the struggle be gone, it's possible. I'm never gonna doubt his power, but I don't think the devil fights fair, and so it's a struggle that I'm gonna have to fight for a long time. It doesn't mean that I'm always gonna fold, but it does mean that I'm gonna have to fight. And sometimes fighting means making hard choices, doing inconvenient things, and opening yourself up to accountability that you need. Because a lot of times what I see with Christians that have these large moral failings is like they didn't set themselves up to be held accountable, and then they had the huge failing, and everything crashes and burns around them. And I don't want that to be my life. And if you're listening and this is something you struggle with, I don't want that to be your life either. So my resources, my thoughts to you is flee. Run away from it. Do what you got to do. I don't sleep with my phone in my room anymore. I've got an external alarm clock. My apps turn off at 10:30. And I've got so many people that check in with me on this. And I've had to restructure some of my accountability to not just, hey, like, let's confess every time you mess up, but like, hey, like, let's actually actively talk about it. Because like when I tell my friends that I'm interested in a female, they'll be like, oh, bet. So what are you going to do about it? And then I'll be like, all right, I guess I should ask her out. And then they'll be like, all right, cool. And then I'll tell them I'm like planning on it. And then before I even ask, they'll be like, yo, so did you do it? Did you ask her out? Did you go to the gym? Did you do this? Did you do, like, we always hold each other accountable about silly things all the time. But the things that are of eternal value, the things that are life-giving or life, like, dampening, we do a crap job sometimes at actually consistently being there and saying, hey, like, let's journey together. And I've got friends that, by God's grace, are willing to journey with me in this, and it's good. But man, it's a fight. It's a fight, and you got to keep fighting. Because one day I do have hope that it's not necessarily going to get easier to like, it's not just going to disappear. Temptation doesn't just, like, it comes and goes, but you get better at fighting. And one day, the testimony isn't just, hey, this is a struggle that's led me to Jesus' feet, but this is a struggle that's led me to Jesus' feet. That's also showed me that the extent of what God's power and his ability to lead me to freedom truly is. So that's what I'm holding on to, and that's what I'm pressing on towards. But friends, if you know someone who struggles, care for them, hold them accountable, push them towards righteousness and holiness, but also be there and show them a glimpse of God's character that they need. Because there's so many lies that infiltrate the mind when in sin, when dealing with shame. But also, man, this life is a heavy life sometimes. So be that glimpse of Jesus, be that glimpse of the Father that somebody may need, because you never know where they are. Man, I'm so terrified to post this episode, because this is literally more than I've ever said about this issue for public consumption. So here we are. Bada bing, bada boom, bada I'm out. I actually really, really like saying that. Nightly Musers, thank you for listening. Feel free to reach out. And be that friend that somebody can lean on. Because you never know. And to those who struggle, or to those who are curious, my warning is stay away. And to those who are struggling, freedom is possible. But my deepest belief is that it doesn't come without fighting it. It doesn't come without a fight. And it's not just fleeing. One of the most memorable things my mentor said to me was, it's not just about fleeing, Kennedy. You run aimlessly away from this thing, you're going to get worn out, tired, and it's going to beat the brakes off of you. And it did several times. But you got to run to something. So run to Jesus. Run to the Father. And he will catch you. And you're going to have to keep running towards him. Pursue him. Don't just run away from something bad. Run away from something bad in an attempt to run towards what's good. So that's my encouragement. And I don't know why this is what I wanted to talk about tonight, but hey, I just hope and pray that this affects somebody. There's so much I didn't say. But hopefully this is a blessing to somebody out there. So Nightly Musers, peace out. Shout out, my goodness. I can't end this thing without shouting out Low Fly Productions. So Low Fly, So Fly, I'm that guy. To say goodbye. Peace.